When it was set up, it was described as a temporary arrangement, a stopgap system to cope with the sudden influx of people seeking asylum in Ireland 10 years later. And critics say we still don't have a coherent, humane and cost-effective way of dealing with the asylum seekers who are now here. Over 6,000 people are in limbo, living in often cramped hostels, unable to work and waiting years for a decision on their futures. As Paul Murphy now reports, the creaking system comes with a high financial and human cost.
In the past 6 years, Ireland has spent over €1.5 billion on the asylum process. You'd have thought that would be enough to pay for a gold-plated system, a model of efficiency. In fact, the asylum system is a mess. Applicants are left waiting often for years before they get a final decision. In the meantime, they're not allowed to work, and the Irish public pay for their upkeep.
The asylum system in Ireland is a broken system. It's one that doesn't work well, neither for the state or for the Irish people or for those who are going through it.
The asylum process in Ireland today is a lose-lose situation.
It's the not knowing how long. It could be 6 months, it could be 5 years, it could be 8 years, so you're in a limbo.
In 2002, when asylum applicants hit over 11,000, they made headlines. However, as numbers dropped, they have all but disappeared from view. But they are still here. Tonight, there are over 6,000 men, women and children in asylum hostels such as these shown in footage shot by residents. When John O'Donoghue introduced asylum hostels 10 years ago, he said they would be for stays of 6 months. But our tortuously slow asylum process keeps people needlessly and expensively in hostels for years. This is where Ireland's lengthy asylum process begins. Asylum seekers first apply here to the Office of the Refugee Applications Commissioner. And the answer to them is invariably no. Currently, just 1% of applicants here are successful at the first stage, compared to an EU average of 27%.
Are people actually being given due process? Are their cases being fairly heard? Organisations such as ours would have real questions around what's happening in the system at the moment, because surely 99% of people can't be, it's too high a figure for people not to be genuine asylum seekers.
Failed applicants bring their case to the Refugee Appeals Tribunal, where most wait longer than 6 months for a decision. It's usually a negative one. Last year, 92% of applicants were rejected. A small minority will then go to court for a judicial review, adding another 6 months at least. But most go straight to the Justice Minister to ask for special leave to remain. Getting a decision there can take years. For many asylum applicants, especially those with families, by the time they get a final decision, Ireland has become home. Take the case of the Adonirans, a Nigerian family who came to Ireland in 2005. After their asylum application failed, Gardaí arrived to deport them in June, but only managed to deport the father. The rest of the family in Ireland split up and went on the run. We met up with them 2 weeks ago, just after they reunited.
This is the first time I've seen my mom since everything happened in June. This is the first time I've seen my sisters, my family. So it's been crazy. I've just been able to speak to my little brother over the phone, and I've been away at friends' places, just trying to squat everywhere. I've been trying to look for people to take me. Some people wouldn't take you in because it's a risk, but some people are just kind enough, they're nice enough to take you in. So
the deportation attempt sparked protests from classmates and friends of the Adonirans. The Irish Refugee Council applied to the Department of Justice to revoke the deportation order on the basis that the family had developed strong links with Ireland. The Ministry's immigration section said the appeal would only be considered if the family went to Gardaí. We followed the family as they did so.
I'm not sure what's going to happen once we're there, but hopefully I'm quite hopeful that everything's going to work out fine.
My children have been here for over 5 years now. We have actually integrated into the system. And my son is supposed to take his living cert in June next year. He has already registered for the exams.
I've lived here for so long, I feel like I'm part of the country. I'm part of the people in the country, and I've met some great people along the way, like friends from school, people from Trinity College and stuff like that, It's been a great time. I had a great experience there at Young Scientist, where I met some reporters from the Irish Times. They published us in the newspaper, so...
When the family reported to Gardaí, their case wasn't reviewed. They were instead detained. Later in the day, they were put in a van and brought to Dublin Airport. This footage captures the deportation of the Adoniran family. Soon after, they were put on a flight back to Nigeria.
It's a little deceptive. The family were in a difficult situation because they needed to comply, and the only way to get the application considered was to comply with the reporting, but then not to even attempt to make any decision on an application was really not fair. It would have, at least I would have hoped, been incumbent upon the department to say, let's look at this properly to be absolutely sure we've got this one right.
Among the wider Irish public, there is misunderstanding of asylum seekers' conditions. We spoke to some people in Monaghan town, near St Patrick's Centre.
They get nearly everything that's going, you know what I mean, that they pay for nothing, you know what I mean, and I don't think it's right. You know, if our own people that's born and living in the country, you know, go to look for anything, we can't get nothing for our people, you know, and I think it's not right just.
I don't want to be too negative towards them, you know, because I don't know fully now. You know, I feel maybe in the post office and that certainly there would be. I feel sometimes I'm the only Irish person queuing in the post office, that there would be a lot of foreign nationals and they would seem to have their social security card and get a lot more than maybe I would get my children's allowances once a month, and that would be it.
I believe they get all the benefits that we get here, maybe more. Cars supposed to take them here and there and different things like that, but maybe that's not true.
The reality is not quite what people think. Here are the facts. Asylum seekers are barred from receiving social welfare. They receive an allowance of €19.10 each per adult per week and €9.60 for children. And they qualify for, though don't always get, a clothing allowance of up to €150 every 6 months. For an adult, it works out at a maximum of €25 per week. The state pays for asylum seekers' bed and board in dedicated hostels around the country under a system called direct provision.
They can be isolated in isolated areas. I think that they're very institutional. People they're not able to make their own food. There are many nationalities living together in very cramped conditions.
The people are living in the hostel for too long of a time. Like they're living there for a longer time that would be expected of any human being. For example, people are living there for 5 years, for 6 years. That is really, really uncalled for.
And for asylum seekers living in hostels, the wait is actually growing. Figures from the Department of Justice show that at the end of 2008, 45% of residents were in hostels for over 2 years. By last September, that had risen to 65%, and most of those were living in hostels for longer than 3 years. All hostels are inspected to ensure they pass basic standards, but St Patrick's Accommodation Centre in Monaghan Town, home to 200 asylum seekers, has been spotlighted over concerns about damp, overcrowding and food. One complaint is that chips are provided as the vegetable option for some children's meals. The Dáil Committee on Health and Children and the HSE visited the centre in July and were critical of what they saw.
When I'm going into a room and I see a mother and 4 young children and I see food stored in a toilet, I don't know how that could get past any inspection.
The lack of sinks and running water is a high risk for infection, especially for families with children in nappies and bottle-fed babies.
Local councillors have also raised concerns, but they haven't been allowed to visit the hostel.
We sought a delegation from Monaghan County Council to visit the centre to see for ourselves what the current position is as opposed to 8 or 10 years ago. We refused. They wouldn't allow us out there to take a look at what's going on. So, I mean, that says it all. If the elected members of the local authority here in the county are refused permission to go in to visit and to look at what's taking place there, what have they to hide?
We requested permission to film inside the asylum centre, but that permission was not forthcoming. So we loaned one of our cameras to one of the residents so that she could film the cramped room that she shares with her partner and her 4 children inside the centre here. What happened when you tried to take the camera out?
The manager found out and then took away.
We went to the manager who had confiscated the camera from May and asked her what right did she think she had to take it. Why did you confiscate it?
Well, she didn't ask our permission to...
She needs your permission
film,
for what?
To film within this centre.
She lives here, but she needs your permission to film her own room.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Under what law is that? Do you mind me asking?
I have no idea on the law, but, you know, she needs written permission to film it within the centre.
Can I have the camera back, please? It's RT property.
I would need written.
You don't need written permission
Well,
for me to
I'm afraid,
request my...
Well, I have been told that we need
Who told you that?
request in writing.
Who told you that?
My boss.
Over 2 hours after it was confiscated, the manager returned the camera, but the images that May had shot of her own room had been deleted. May says she was offered alternative accommodation at 2 hostels in Munster, but rejected them as also unsuitable. Despite the efforts of management, we were able to get mobile phone footage of her family's room. Operating asylum hostels is good business. This year, the state will pay on average over €1.6 million for each of the 46 asylum hostels. St Patrick's is guaranteed around €30 per bed per night from the state, equating to a revenue of almost €200,000 per month.
We would certainly call on the government to, look at other alternative forms, housing association, not-for-profit businesses or charities to run the hostels.
We requested an interview with St Patrick's owner, businessman Hugh McGivern. We wanted to ask him about overcrowding and residents' complaints about food and facilities. But Mr McGivern failed to respond to our requests. We also looked for an interview with Justice Minister Dermot Ahern. We wanted to ask him why he hasn't overhauled a system in which people are left for years in hostels at the taxpayers' expense. He also declined to be interviewed. However, critics of the direct provision system say that the biggest problem is not hostel facilities, it's the damage that the hostel system itself poses to residents' mental health.
The system of direct provision and dispersal itself seems to be just toxic to mental health. There's all kinds of problems with it. People don't have the right to work, they don't have the right to seek work, they don't have the right to any kind of independent accommodation, and the living conditions in direct provision and dispersal centres, like in reception centres, are often not good.
Bright Udemezwe is applying for asylum and has been in Knocklashin hostel just outside Limerick City since 2007. A pastor with training in psychotherapy, he says mental problems are rife in the system.
I've seen 2 people try to kill themselves. One lady has set herself on fire. One boy has slashed his wrist. And I've seen fights started for no just cause. There is no week without an incident that only befits a beast, not a human, in that center. No week. And I mean it.
Eli Chiaba came to Ireland in 2007 from the Congo. He stays in a hostel in Tramore, County Waterford, with his wife and 3 children in one room. He's been turned down for asylum, but is currently looking for leave to remain. Like many asylum seekers, he says the biggest problem is that he's forbidden from providing for his family.
For 3 years now, you feel like it's a kind of prison life. You have no control over your life. You don't control what you want to eat, when you want to eat. You have to accept what you are given. As a father, when I was back in Africa, I was providing for my family. I was providing for my wife, for my kids, but now I cannot do anything. You feel sometimes it's a suicide feeling coming.
If life here is so miserable, why doesn't Ellie go back to the Congo?
I was really facing that, and I cannot plan going back to the Congo now. I have kids to raise, I have a wife to look after.
A new streamlined system is promised under a new immigration bill, but we have been here before.
It's the 3rd version of the bill. It's originally 2006, then 2008. The 2008 one was scrapped in May 2010 and a new one published the following month.
The worry is that the law won't be passed before the general election early next year, and reform will be further delayed. The irony of the asylum mess that the state created is that both asylum seekers and the Irish taxpayer will win if people are given a speedy and fair answer to their asylum application.